How about approval of the minutes and agenda?
Yes. So can we get a motion to approve the minutes of our June 10th meeting as well as the agenda for this meeting?
I recommend approval of the minutes and what was it, the agenda you wanted to?
Right, tonight's agenda.
I didn't know. I just heard you say the minutes and I would like to approve.
Right, the minutes for our June meeting and then tonight's agenda for the meeting.
Yes, I approve both the minutes and the agenda, if I hear you right.
And do we have a second?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Berenice. So we have a motion by Berenice, and can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Seconded by Caren. So approved. Any opposition? Okay. And old business, what's on the docket, Miss Andy, or did you already do that?
I don't believe we have public here to see if we need a public comment. So new business is COVID and CARES Act funding.
Okay.
Which I guess is all me, and is more of just an update to let you guys know. As you know, the city is still closed to the public. We're all here working. Well, transit is here working. If an employee is able to work from home, they are encouraged to work from home. So our admin staff, which are here tonight, myself, Muna, and Nancy, we are in and out. So we are, I mean, as you can see, I'm here tonight with all my, I don't have a bookshelf, but I have all my Sam bling on the walls. So we are here probably more than we're not here, but it's really hard to stay away when there's so much happening. The drivers are all here. PW is in the building as well, and parks. Everyone's wearing masks. Everyone's social distancing. There's only one person per office at a time. We can have 2 people in the dispatch office, but it must be brief, and it can't be more than 2 people. As most of you know, the dispatch office is fairly large. We are still, as drivers, wiping down touch surfaces at the end of our routes. We disinfect the buses every night when they come in. We did get our fancy spray gun finally, so we are able to spray the bus and have it disinfected in, I think it's 10 minutes. So all of the good COVID protection is still in place. We have germ guards up. As you know, those germ guards were built by Ben and Brian. So we are looking at getting professionally installed germ guards, probably from Gillig. Not sure what we'll do for the cutaways yet, but Gillig does make a good germ guard. And the CARES Act funding. So the CARES Act, as you know, the funding was passed. Part of that was where everybody got a stimulus check, but there was money in that CARES Act for transit. So City of Sandy received, I put it in front of me so I could tell you the exact number. There it is. $395,141 right off the bat. And the contract for that funding will end June of 2021. We just put in our first reimbursement request in, I don't even know what month I'm in, September. Okay, so in August, for some reimbursement for all of our COVID supplies, some reimbursement for sick time and administrative leave that drivers took, especially when COVID first began, some reimbursement for some lost revenue. So we did see, obviously we haven't been collecting fares since March, since late March. We still aren't. This group agreed in June that we would tie receiving fares to when the county or the city moves into stage 2. I'm starting to get my levels and my stages of wildfire versus COVID confused, but when we are more safe and things are opened back up and the city opens back up, we will look then at starting to charge fares again. We also did see a drop in transit tax collection. So we've asked for both the coverage of a loss in fares and a coverage for the drop in transit tax.
Andy, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
That 395,141 that we got from the CARES Act, is that all for transit, or was that just, okay, thank you.
That is all for the transit department. Yes, that's all transit funding. And I should also add that since Muna would know better, but I think maybe April, we've been conducting the Meals on Wheels because they couldn't have volunteers. And even now that they can have volunteers, it's not everybody wants to do all of the things that you need to do to be a volunteer. You have to make sure you wipe down the trays, etc. So we are using this CARES Act funding to pay for our participation in the Meals on Wheels program. It actually works very well for us because our dial-a-ride service dropped so much during the COVID time period that it was fairly easy for us to free up a driver and switch that driver to Meals on Wheels. If we do not spend the entire amount, because that is a fairly large amount of money for this agency, we are allowed to extend the contract. So it's not a spend it or you lose it pot of money. There is another pot of money out there. This was based on a formula. It was based on how much we get in federal funds, in 5311 actually. And therefore, we could, if we saw that we were going to need more funding, apply for another grant through the CARES Act for even more funding. I don't know that we'll need to do that right away. It's possible, but I don't know right away. So anybody have questions about COVID or CARES Act for me?
And Teresa might know the answer to this, but I thought I saw a notice today that the county was going to be quite a ways from going into phase 2 because they had not met 4 of the 5 guidelines.
I'm not gonna, I was only part of a conversation today about that. I mean, my understanding is that we're still running behind on a lot of the indicators. So, you know, there's a variety of different things, you know, the number of positive COVID cases, you know, some different things like that. And I know that we're running behind at this point, county-wide. And so I don't want to falsely make a prediction, but we would need to see a lot of those indicators turn around for a 2 or 3 week period of time before we could contemplate phase 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Okay, how about STF, Andy?
You know, hidden under there, I think at first is new trolley and buses.
All right.
I'm gonna put that there and hope I don't forget what I just did with that file. We received our new trolley, our blue trolley, in August, I believe. Heather, you were here to come see it. Do you remember?
Yes. I believe it was early August. Your folks were here. That was one timing
That's
marker, I guess.
Yep. Okay. I did not accept the trolley. because it had some, as you know, when buses arrive, you sign for it if it has everything that you asked for in the RFQ. And there were some things that were not acceptable. Nothing enormous and nothing that is not getting fixed by the vendor. Examples of what I'm talking about are in Oregon, the exhaust pipe on a bus needs to be roadside, not curbside, obviously, because your passengers are over there and don't need to breathe that. And the exhaust pipe was curbside. The merge sign came on every time you put the left turn signal on, which is unacceptable. A bus is merging back into traffic after leaving a bus stop, but is not always merging every time they turn left. So they had to disconnect the yield and turn signal. So things along that nature. Those were the bigger things that had to happen. There were some more smaller things, so there was some negotiation and back and forth. So it's taken a little longer than I hoped, but it is in town and most of the big things have been fixed. So you should see it very soon. I do want to put out there, and I know, and Jan's already given a heads up to City Council on our behalf, thank you, Jan, that I did put out an RFQ for the 2 vans that will replace our MV1s, and there are medical rides vehicles. I requested the price to come back for both gas and hybrid and electric. And I probably should have the exact numbers in front of me, but I don't. But the vehicle itself was quoted at around $77,000. They are Ford Transit vans. Then we were quote if we wanted it in gas. Then we were quoted an additional $15,500 if we wanted to make it a hybrid vehicle. And then we were quoted an additional, I think, $117,000 if we want to make it electric.
Wow.
And yes, that is on top of the $77,000. So with those responses, and I'm going to pull up the exact numbers while I continue, but so with those responses, I reached out to several different places to see if there was a smaller vehicle that might be less expensive, like a minivan instead of a Ford Transit. And the basic answer is that if you're going to choose a hybrid or an electric through the state contract, which in this case we need to use because our funding says that we should, although I'm also still looking into that, but that is pretty much our only option, is this Ford Transit van through the state contract. I will also be looking at the Washington contract, but I've reached out to colleagues and I've requested market research from a consultant, and so far what I have found is that this is our option. So my thought is to basically go in front of City Council and give them the various options and request their input and or approval. My recommendation to City Council will likely be that we create a hybrid vehicle and continue to look at having an electric fleet, but it's very expensive.
I would certainly support you on the hybrid. I'm just astonished at how expensive the electric is.
Right. My thoughts as well. Yes, thank you for that. Anybody else have any thoughts? I'm trying to see where those exact numbers were. Anybody else have thoughts about electric or hybrid or gas?
Any kind of just really rough figuring as far as if we were to go with an electric, offset of fuel costs that would be saved with the electric. Obviously, there's going to be the electrical charge, but or the money needed for the charging, but yeah, that would be one question. Just even if we had kind of an idea.
Mhm. Okay, I will look into that. Part of that, unfortunately, especially in smaller buses, the batteries don't last as long as you would think they would either. So by the time you've caught up on your cost savings and maintenance, you need a new battery. So, but I'll get exact numbers on that. That's a good point. I'll add that to my list.
That would apply to the hybrid as well then, with the savings.
No, the hybrid batteries do last longer. As a matter of fact, we do have one hybrid here already. Our Ford is a hybrid. It's a Ford Escape. We mainly use it as a service vehicle, especially when it snows. But and we use it for shift changes and things of that nature. And the battery should have gone a long time ago, but it's still doing really well. The feedback from the dealer has been that because most of our service in that vehicle is so stop and go, we're charging the battery a lot more and treating it nicer. So it has lasted a long time.
And also my understanding of the hybrid batteries is that their life is greatly prolonged. The more you drive the vehicle, the longer the battery life is extended for hybrids. That it's not so much a time issue as it is how much it's actually being driven.
So the exact cost was $77,000 for the base cost of the vehicle. We would add another, let's round up to $16,000 to make it a hybrid. If we wanted to make it an all-electric vehicle, you would add $122,000 to the $77,000. Oh, hold on, Caren.
I wanted to,
Okay, I see that Caren,
On mute, okay.
there you go.
Since there is a mandate for these things to go electric eventually, do you think that price will come down?
I do think the price will come down, and I also believe the state will try and find ways to help agencies fund those vehicles.
Okay.
could I ask, is maintenance different than the current maintenance that you use for the gas? Does it require somebody, a specialist, or can anybody learn, or just what is the maintenance problems?
Yeah, so maintenance is less expensive because you can get around lube oil and filters and transmission problems, etc. But you're right. Some agencies are reporting that they have unexpected costs because they need a specialist. I will say, though, that the studies or the agencies that I've heard that from are using big buses, and they've learned things like they have to have 2 mechanics on site rather than 1 because the batteries are on top. So, you know, just physically, they're paying double for the mechanics. But yes, it is a different, very different maintenance.
I know on my hybrid, I just have to take it in once a year for its checkup. So it's very nice.
Right. Yeah, so that part's wonderful. Yep. Yeah. That's a good question, though. I will admit that most of the time I've spent looking into electrics, I'm looking at the bigger buses and not necessarily the smaller vehicles. So that is also something I need to educate myself on.
I will say we have electric and hybrid, and the electric ones are TriMet are really. We have 5 of them. They're really bad. We spend more time in the shop than on the road, and we finally got our hybrids now that they're actually pretty good buses. So I would say hybrids are better than electric right now.
Thank you, Chris. I've heard your new flyer horror stories from TriMet over there with your electric buses. Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you.
Yep.
So, unless anybody has any other questions about that or input, if you have strong feelings about electric, let me know. Otherwise, I think we can move on to our STIF plan.
I agree with Jan. I don't think it's the right time for us to spend the funds on electric at this point. Once the technology and the transit vehicles gets a little bit more experience under its belt and advanced, then we can keep looking. But it's like too early. I think it's jumping the gun.
I agree. Thank you. We are also, I'm looking for a file, so if you don't see my face, I apologize. But I also feel like we are at a different time and place due to COVID and wildfires and the state of the economy than we were when we started looking at electric vehicles. And I'm not sure that that is the responsible way to spend our funding at the moment.
I know the mayor wanted electric vehicles, but if he hears this price, he won't.
Right? Nothing like a $200,000 bus to make you change your mind, especially when some of them don't even work.
Right.
All right, so Heather, can I move into STIF, you think?
Yep, let's go ahead and do the STIF plan.
All right. Let's see, I've got it open on another computer, so.
I also just want to say my apologies for being late. I was in another training, which was going a little bit longer, so.
No worries, we're happy you're here.
Thank you, glad to be here.
All right, I am going to share my screen. I will admit I've been on the phone most of today. There we go. Let's see. All right, can you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So our new STIF plan is due. We have to, if you recall from the last STIF, and actually since we have somebody new in our meeting, I'm going to go ahead and give a little background on STIF. STIF is the statewide transportation improvement fund, and we started receiving this funding after the House Bill 2017 passed transportation funds and had transit funds included in it. We, with our funds that Sandy received in 2019 is when we started receiving funds, we did several capital projects, such as we rebranded the bus stop signs and rebranded a couple of buses, got new office computers, which were so needed. We were running XP and not protected anymore, and monitors. We did some solar panel improvements on the bus shelters on Highway 26. We are currently in the process of putting out an RFQ to have Wi-Fi on the Sam Gresham route. We have put out an RFQ and got no responses, so now we're taking bids for a new dispatch software. And we are working with the Sandy IT department to create a new transit tax software that can communicate with the software that is used at City Hall. So that was in the first 6 months of funding, was when all of that funding was allocated. The rest of the funding, we added a nighttime run to Sam Gresham Monday through Friday, year round. We added an evening run to Sam Estacada that is Monday through Saturday, year round. And we added 2 hours to the shopper shuttle Monday through Friday, year round. Anything that was left after that funding, we put into a what we called capacity planning / construction, which you all probably recall is for us to build a new, well, to add to the bathrooms that are here at the Operations Center for the drivers. And the drivers really need some private break space. You know, currently their break space is right out here outside my office, and it's not very private for them. And then they also need a training room. So, so we are saving money to plan, first of all, to hire a consultant to plan the best, most efficient way to add that space to this building, and then we'll start construction. So I have put on this spreadsheet, it's now time for us to move into our next STIF plan. And at the top of this spreadsheet, what you see, if you look at fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, this is what Sandy was allocated. Here, I'll do this. This is what the funding for the projects that I just listed off for you. So we were expected to receive $338,873 over that time period for those projects that I just mentioned. We have been right on target until recently in a meeting. It was shared with us that there are new expectations for Sandy, and it looks like we'll probably end due to COVID, so a reduction in payroll taxes that are being collected. And we'll probably end up with probably more around this 302,073. In our case, what that means is we will continue to preserve that service that we put out, but we won't have as much going into that construction project. Luckily for us, as you know, we just finished our Transit Master Plan update. And in that Transit Master Plan, we looked at both a bloom scenario of, you know, what happens if we, at the time that we started that plan, we were in great shape. Funding was incredible. We were looking at electric vehicles and construction projects, and then COVID hit, and luckily there was also a gloom scenario of what happens when your operations costs go up, which ours did, because as you know, we got a new contractor, and funding goes down. So what we know is that the city of Sandy, both elected officials and the public, during that planning process, had said that in the gloom, which is where we are now, they would prefer we preserve service before continuing with capital projects, which makes sense, right? So we're going to do all we can to not cut service, but we probably won't see as many capital projects as we have seen, especially in the past 3 to 4 years.
Andy, can you, I don't know if this is a good point of time to do this, but just give kind of a quick answer to what's our ridership like? Has it jumped a little bit at all since March, or what are we seeing?
Since March, yes. So we had a significant drop in ridership in March, obviously. We did not cut service much. You know that we cut briefly at the end of March. We dropped to an hourly instead of every half hour on Sam Gresham. That didn't last very long. We put that service back in place as soon as we could. We have seen rebounds in ridership, and actually I can probably pull up a graph for you. We are seeing rebounds. So right now, I believe we're running at about 60% of what we would normally see this time of year. It has gone, we might be at 35 now, but it has gone up. We have seen monthly increments. Then we had the wildfire though. So this month obviously really got thrown off. We canceled Estacada, we canceled the shopper shuttle. And the dial-a-ride is still pretty low. The vulnerable population is staying home, which is understandable.
Thanks for that.
You got it. We are following ODOT's lead that we believe that transit needs to be reliable. So if we can afford to continue to put service out, we will continue to put service out. That being said, if we were to see empty buses, we would start thinking about cutting the service, but the buses are not empty. They are just not where they usually are.
Well, I'm happy to hear 65-ish%. I mean, that's higher than I thought. So that's good news, I think.
Yeah. The shopper shuttle stayed pretty strong in ridership during COVID. Estacada stayed really strong. Sam dropped off quite a bit, and as you know, Sam is the bulk of our ridership. So what happens with Sam is pretty much what you'll see in our ridership. But the wildfires were different in that no one was riding the shopper shuttle during that event. So I'll see if I can come up with a chart, but in the meantime, I just want to go over this this new plan with you. I will tell you that I was in meetings most of today and have probably more to come because there's still a lot of questions about this this funding, what numbers we're using, for estimates, so that we can have an understanding of what to expect. But basically, fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, these are the numbers that have high numbers that have been given to us by TriMet. Chris, just so you are aware, for several funding programs, TriMet is what is called our qualified entity. So our money runs through TriMet and they disperse it to us.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So that's the short story and why you'll hear me talk about TriMet a lot.
Okay.
So as you can see, we went from 131,000 in fiscal year 20 and 150,000 in fiscal year 21 down to 98,000, and that's on the high end of what they expect us to see for fiscal year 22. So a pretty significant drop in STIF funds. You'll see that I've added in the first year audit. So we are audited. So we're audited every year. The city is audited. If we spend more than $750,000 as a department, which we did this year, the department is audited. And then we also are audited specifically on the STIF program. That audit last year was about $8,300. So I have put some funding in this plan to cover the audit. And then these are estimates on what it will cost us just to continue the service that we put out during our last STIF plan. So as you can see, there won't be a lot left over. This line here is what is left over after we've paid for the audit and we've paid to maintain our service. Normally, or last year typically, we would have rolled that into that construction project that we talked about. However, what I am recommending and seeking your feedback on is, with the times as they are, what I would rather do is put this construction project on hold and create what's called a program reserve, and have any extra funding go into this project or task, as they'll call it in our application. And by doing that, because we were able to get some legislation changed earlier in the year, we can flex this funding then to cover anything where we might be short. And I do expect that we won't see our usual federal lands access program funds for a little while. That's been put off. So we are looking at quite a significant hole in our funding that $12,000 isn't going to touch, but it'll be nice to have it if we need it. So does anybody have any heartburn over shifting any excess in funds from a capital project to a line item that would allow us to use it for operations if we needed to?
I think it's a good idea.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Great, great. Okay, so as I said, I do have several meetings. These numbers might change, so this may not be the final plan as far as numbers go, but it sounds like we're all pretty secure with the understanding that our main concern is just continuing our service levels at the current service levels.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Great. All right. All right, well, then I think I did not mention, I have $5,000 here because the city was just awarded a Safe Routes to School grant for improvements. And the transit department did partner with other departments. There are some bus stop improvements that were identified in the Safe Routes plan around the middle school area. So I partnered with the planning department to help fund some of those bus stop improvements during that process.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great. All right, I've been talking for a long time.
How about bus barns?
Yay!
Yay!
Okay. Last time we met, the bus barn looked like this. I'm assuming you can still see this picture I'm putting up. No?
Just the spreadsheet. That spreadsheet.
Okay. So.
Oh, there you go.
Hi. Okay. So the last time we met, the bus barns look like this. It's a Gillig. I thought maybe that was the blue trolley in that barn, but it wasn't. Okay. So the last time we met, for Chris especially, we have, this is our bus wash area. This is where we house buses. As you can see, we used to park over here just in the dirt, well, in the gravel. We have been, for the past year, building 2 new bus barns. to park all these buses in. It will be so lovely when it's finally finished. A close up. So this is closer where we were last meeting, and this is where we are now. Actually, maybe you can't. Can you? Oh, share screen. All right, can you guys see that picture?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a change.
All right, yeah. So they were supposed to be done this week. Probably not happening. There are still some trees that need to be planted over on way over in that area as a screen from the street so that you can't see these lovely buildings back here. And they are currently, they still need to pave through here. And today they were painting these lovely steel structures yellow so buses don't run into them. But we are painted and the structure is up. There are several items that have already been inspected. So hopefully this project should be wrapping up next month.
Yay.
Are they going to have doors on them like the other one?
They are not. The project, so originally the buildings were not planned to have doors. We did decide last minute that we would go out to bid with the understanding that it would be prepared for doors, and separately that we would get a price for doors. Because the grant that we had did not price doors, so we weren't sure we could afford it. The grant that we had was from many years ago, and so the cost of these barns was well over what the grant was for. So I believe the final bid was $807,000 for these barns, and it was an extra $100,000 for doors. So
Wow.
someday we will get around to putting doors in there. The little one on the right here is not prepared for doors. They are both equipped to charge electric buses when we get there.
Oh.
We will have to work with PGE on running the electric to it, but they are built with the understanding that someday there will be electric vehicles in there.
With all the problems with the riots and stuff that's been going on in Portland, have we seen any kind of problems with our bus area being vandalized or anything?
We have not seen anything like that. I will say that we have changed the shopper shuttle route slightly on Monday evenings when they do the flag waves in front of Taco Bell. There have been, so if you picture the shopper shuttle, the trolley pulls in front of Safeway and travels the parking lot in front of DMV and behind Taco Bell and comes out, is it Snitz?
At the light, right?
Well, there's not a light, but at in between Taco Bell and Wendy's.
Right. The Goodwill, yeah.
Yeah, the Goodwill, thank you. So we had a couple of drivers very nervous about being in the parking lot because they were walking back and forth between the cigar shop and the road. And then also their flags are, they have a hard time seeing left to pull out on the highway with the flags there. So we did not see a problem with not pulling into those businesses just, you know, that hour that they're waving flags on Monday evenings. We still stop, you know, at the stops on the highway, but we don't actually pull in and for an hour. Other than that, we haven't seen. We've had a couple people try to get on board armed. That's against our policy. So they were not allowed on board. But other than that, we have not seen vandalism. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, there's our bus barns. This entire department will be thrilled when they're finished, let me tell you. It's been, I wish that this picture reflected how, I mean, the drivers have to do this whole tight, when we come in at night, everybody's parked everywhere. So they have to do this whole obstacle course, tight squeeze. We've had a couple of so they'll be thrilled when we don't have to do that anymore and they have their nice little parking spots back here.
So it looks like the car wash is finished.
Yes, it was rebuilt. We had we were not able, to be honest, I ran out of time. The building is not structurally sound for a door. I wanted to put a door on one end to block the wind for the washer. And it would require a structural engineer. And I ran out of time. That was kind of an added option onto the grant. But the bus wash itself has been entirely rebuilt inside.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got new plumbing that's been weatherized. We have a brand new filter medias. We have a brand new pressure washer. It seems to be running very well.
Good, good.
Yeah. And we saved a ton of money, actually. We didn't end up spending, the grant was for, I think, $100,000 project, and the grant was for $80,000, and we spent about $40,000.
Wow.
PW was actually able to help us quite a bit on cleaning out the system itself, and then the rebuild was a lot less expensive than putting in an entirely new bus wash from another company. But we weren't able to go automated, which I really wanted to do, but it was really expensive.
But we have a fantastic bus washer.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do.
Well, and we get to employ someone or someones.
That's true.
Yes.
Our current bus washer is a woman, and she is fantastic. So that is it for me. I think Teresa probably has quite a bit to share.
How are we doing on time? We got about 15 minutes.
Yep.
All right. Well, let me talk really fast then. So obviously the last few months have been a lot of ups and downs for the Mount Hood Express in terms of closures in the Mount Hood National Forest, closure of Timberline, a lot of limitations of service. We had additional, when we were kind of sort of, I'm not going to say getting back to normal because this isn't normal, but we were at least getting back towards our regular schedule. And then unfortunately, the fires hit, and we had another shutdown of the Mount Hood National Forest to discourage folks from entering there for their own safety. So it's really been a lot of back and forth. Some things that we have been doing to help out a little bit, at least pre-fire, we were providing starting to provide some extra runs on the weekends to accommodate the need for social distancing on our buses. Our 37 passenger buses are only able to take, is it 10 or 11? Kind of looking at you guys.
10.
10,
yeah,
11 with the driver, I think.
Yeah, are only able to take 10 people at a time rather than 37 plus. So we've actually had put in some extra buses on weekends. We've been using COVID funding, the COVID related, the CARES Act funding to provide transit support to assist in paying for that. And we're definitely going to be looking at some additional options for that. If the businesses up on Mount Hood are able to stay open over the weekend, if we enter phase 2, we're still going to have some restrictions probably around social distancing. So it's going to be an interesting challenge this winter to maintain a level of service that meets the needs of the public. Particularly, I worry a lot about the employees. We've got a pretty decent number of employees who work up on the mountain who are dependent on the Mount Hood Express to get back and forth from work. So we're really trying to work hard to preserve that core level of service. We've seen some of the similar ridership drop-offs that Sandy's seen just because of the limitations on what's been going on. So it's definitely an interesting time. We're also not charging fares until we get to phase 2. Fortunately, again, we've had some CARES Act support, which has made a big difference in our ability to sustain the service temporarily. So some things that we're looking at going forward, we do have some new vehicles coming in. I think we have one that's going to be delivered this week, one of the small cutaways. And so we've also got a couple of Category Bs that will coming in later this fall that will provide a lot of relief to us as we've kind of beaten the heck out of our other buses that we bought a short 3 or 4 years ago. They're already in rather terrible shape. So it'll give us a little bit of capacity as far as fleet goes, which is going to be really important as we look at extra buses on the weekends or possibly even during the weekdays because of the social distancing requirements. Funding wise, it feels like a real moving target right now. We're going through some of the same processes that Andy's going through in terms of looking at funding, at potential cuts, and what sustainability looks like for our programs. Our number one concern is, the Mount Hood Express has a really solid group of riders, core riders, who have stuck with the service for a long period of time, and we want to make sure that we preserve the service for them and that we're able to support our community partners at the same time. So we'll really be looking at strategies for how we can keep our existing service intact regardless of cuts in revenue and other issues. So that's one of our primary concerns. Also taking a really critical look at vehicles and making sure we would, the one thing that we never counted on, I think I've just talked to this group before a little bit about, but not some of you that are newer, is that the miles that we're putting on these vehicles are really, really hard miles. They're not the type of miles that you would normally see on a transit bus. So vehicles that we thought were going to last us 8 or 9 years are lasting us 3 or 4. We're putting a lot of hard miles on them. So we're having to kind of rethink our long-term objectives around vehicle replacement and the cycle and what that looks like. A few other things that are going on kind of at the county level. I think there was a mention earlier that the county has a survey out, and there's some other information that's going to be coming out around the countywide transit development plan. So this is a plan that's focusing on connections between communities, particularly gaps where there is not transit available, and how we can best meet those gaps in the long term, how we can provide the most cost-efficient and effective types of services to meet the needs of our citizens, particularly vulnerable populations, but also everyone. So it's going to be an interesting process as we go through that. COVID has delayed everything. We had grandiose plans of being a lot further along with this than we are right now. Same thing can be said for the Vision Around the Mountain plan, which is still going forward, but that should have been done last year. And we're still just now, the Vision Around the Mountain plan is a planning project in partnership with ODOT and Columbia Area Transit that Andy and Muna and I have been involved with for quite a while now. That looks at kind of that bigger picture of connectedness of transit going, between all around Mount Hood, the Columbia Gorge and everything. So some of these planning projects have just been delayed, and there's nothing we can do about it. I know I personally have spent enormous amounts of time working first the COVID EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center for the county. And most recently, the county actually had to fire up a second EOC for the fires. And I've been in on both of those. So there's been a lot of demands on a lot of people, and a lot of kind of draining of manpower resources into some of these emergency responses. So I certainly am really grateful to all of our partner agencies. I'd like to particularly mention that the City of Sandy, and along with all the other small transits in Clackamas County, and our partners in TriMet and Ride Connection, all just really came together to do what we needed to do to provide assistance with evacuation and emergency transportation. And it was a really remarkable process. So I'm really grateful to everyone for their support on some of those things. Looking forward, again, we too are going to be working on our STIF plans. We're going to be, we've got meetings coming up for that in the very near future to talk, and we'll have a plan in place for some, for both funding sustainability as well as projects that hopefully will come to pass if we get some stability around some of our different funding sources. I've probably got lots of other stuff that I could rattle on about. We've got last mile shuttles. We'll be starting up in the next few months in Oregon City and in the Clackamas industrial area. There's lots of other moving pieces going on, but I'll stop there and see if anybody has any questions for me.
What happens this winter when ski season and so forth starts, as far as being able to transport people up there? Are you able to patch together the other buses to help with this distancing problem?
Well, my best guess is that we're going to continue to have a lot of social distancing restrictions. So that's where what we have started to do, and we'll have to explore what this looks like for the winter, is having second buses basically available. So for any given route during busy times, we would have a second bus available to hopefully minimize the number of turndowns. Now, that still creates an issue, let's be honest. If I can only fit 10 people on my 37 passenger bus, and 37 people are standing in line, having a second bus still isn't going to take care of those extra 7 people who are standing there. So we're still looking at a lot of really restricted capacity issues. And I'm very hopeful that by winter we'll maybe get some good answers about how we can help mitigate that a little bit. But I think the reality is that we're probably not going to be able to meet all the demand, because I do not have unlimited funding to be able to put 3 or 4 buses on the road instead of 1, to say nothing of issues around having enough drivers and everything else. So there's some pretty significant challenges ahead for the Mount Hood Express, because we have such a seasonal model of how we do business, in terms of, again, we have our core ridership, which is about half the riders that ride it are regular riders, but those times like the ski season where ridership doubles or triples, we're gonna have a really hard time, and I don't think there's anything we can do to mitigate it.
Teresa, do you think that maybe with because of the COVID and how you were saying that the funding isn't going to be there to put 3 or 4 or 5 buses on the road to keep the social distancing requirements, do you know if any of the businesses or surrounding transits, I'm not sure if funds can be allocated in that manner due to the COVID, since it's a special unprecedented situation that's not, obviously common occurrence, but to help in those funding areas to support Clackamas with the Mount Hood Express in getting more buses up there. So if we had 5 buses going up per se, just hypothetically, would the Mount Hood businesses, because obviously they would be getting more business up there, be willing to pitch in to help keep the buses rolling, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if that's even an option.
I think there's two different pieces of that. So the first is looking toward our local businesses, and we need to be really realistic about the fact that our local businesses have been devastated by the impact of COVID. The businesses that normally would be very willing to support us, at least to some extent, to help out, are really being challenged right now. Even our primary supporters, the ski resorts up there who have been our private partners for many years now, are really genuinely struggling. They're barely making it. So asking them to put in a lot of extra money to provide rides to even less people than we normally would transport in non-COVID days is going to be a real challenge, because many of them are struggling to stay afloat. The second piece of that is, are there alternate funding strategies? We are pursuing a what we call a CARES discretionary grant. So there was a chunk of money that all of us got by formula. So that was awarded to all of the transit agencies to help support COVID response. And then there's also a piece of money that the state retained, and they've made that available by application. So for those of us like the Mountain Hood Express, who really have some unusual circumstances in terms of their ability to meet service needs, or if there's extra dollars needed for PPE, personal protective equipment, or vehicle modifications or anything like that, you do have the ability to submit an application. So we've got an application going in. That application will support, because we will be running out of the CARES Money Act that we received by formula very quickly. We're well before June 30th, and possibly as early as the end of this quarter. So we are applying for additional funding to help put those extra buses on the road, and hopefully we'll have positive word on that, so that will help us out. The final piece of it is just frankly capacity. It's not just about vehicles, it's about drivers. And having enough qualified trained drivers, particularly for the Mountain Hood Express, because during the winter season, it really does require a unique skill set to be able to safely operate those vehicles in the winter. Right. Even if I had the money for it, coming up with 5 times the number of drivers that we need to operate our service to put those extra 4 buses on the road probably wouldn't happen in the time frame that we're talking about. I mean, I'm just being realistic. So there's some barriers. We're doing everything we can to mitigate the impact. We're planning on trying to get extra vehicles on the road. We've been working with MV on that. We've got a couple new vehicles coming in to help the fleet impacts, but we also just have to be realistic about capacity. And many of our partner agencies, they're experiencing the same kind of things. Around capacity and drivers and dollars and everything like that. So it's not even a situation where we can look to some of our partners and say, hey, could you start picking up some routes, because they don't have vehicles and drivers, because they too are having to look at different kinds of service because of the capacity issues. So we're all in the same boat on that one.
Okay, I get it. So I didn't think about I wasn't thinking when I said businesses, I was just thinking out of the box, but not really, I guess. But okay, well, I'm just trying to think that come winter, granted, because everybody's homeschooled now because of online, and everybody's stuck at home because of COVID, and obviously a lot of businesses aren't opening back up. Some are completely closing. That I kind of think that come winter, we're going to see an increase in ridership, knowing that they could get on the Mount Hood Express and be able to go up to, Govey or Timberline and hang out for the day and enjoy a family time of just getting away without it costing an arm and a leg.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that if we weren't in the situation that we're in, we potentially could see an increase in ridership, but again, it's just the realities of dollars and capacity. And you know, there'll be a lot of, in terms of the ski resorts and stuff, there'll be a lot of restrictions, you know, for their capacity too. So,
Yes.
so we're all hanging in there. We'll do the best job that we can. We're definitely looking at other funding resources, you know, our ultimate goal is to keep this service intact and weather this very difficult time, and
Well,
keep moving
hopefully
on.
the riders will get the message that you can't all go Saturday. Some of you are going to have to go during the week.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Teresa, for all that you do and everything that you are trying to do to keep the Mount Hood Express going, because it's very important, especially for us up here in Sandy and on the mountain, to be able to get up there to the other part of our community up higher on the mountain and be able to enjoy it without having to drive your car and add more cars on the road and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or anything for me? I think I've sucked up enough time. So
Thank you, Teresa.
yeah, good to see you all.
Good to see you. Caren, can you stay on the meeting when everybody else drops off?
Yeah,
Okay. I just want to touch base with you real quick.
okay. I owe you the time, actually.
Any other business questions, comments from anyone?
No. I'll be in touch tomorrow, though, I think, Muna, for more information about Brian.
Great, thanks. We'll get in touch, Berenice.
You bet.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:04?
Also move.
Thank you, Karen. A second, please.
I second the motion.
Second.
Okay, moved by Karen, seconded by Bernice and Roxy.
Okay.
Any opposition and all in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, any opposition? Okay, so moved to adjourn the meeting.
Bye, everybody.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Have a good